Hello, and if this is your first viewing, welcome to, and if you're a repeat viewer, welcome back to the NOTCAST. I talk about things that interest me about twice a week to my mobile phone, whilst other people watch propaganda shows downstairs on the telly box. Today is number 331. It is Wednesday, the 8th of November, 2023. I'm talking about a popular beat combo from Liverpool. For the first time ever, I'm going to do an episode about a band that you may have heard of called the Beatles. And the reason that I haven't talked about them previously is because there are approximately 20,000 other people talking about the Beatles. And just when you thought they'd run out of things to talk about, they think about something new to talk about the band, which, believe it or not, I think the Beatles' history might be the most documented piece of world history ever, apart from possibly World War II. Pretty sure, actually, that some of the cable channels are going to be doing a Beatles channel pretty shortly, because the History Channel is, let's be honest, it's a Hitler channel, isn't it? It's all about World War II. It's about the Nazi UFO plans and abandoned megastructures. And so, therefore, the History Channel should be about what happened before the Beatles formed, what happened when the Beatles were together, and then what happened after the Beatles split up. And, of course, the most recent release by Beatles, Now and Then. The very last Beatles song by this popular beat combo that haven't toured for years and not released very much for quite a while. So, before I get too deep into it, I need to talk a little bit about my relationship to the band. And I'm not going to be eating any humble pie, but possibly humble pizza. And just to say, when I was younger, I really didn't like the Beatles. I didn't like the Beatles for loads and loads of reasons, one of which is everybody I knew liked them, including the kids at school that I didn't like. The second reason is, and as I grew older, every issue of Mojo and inevitably Q, Uncut, Word, and all those other gentlemen's monthlies for rock connoisseurs told me the Beatles were the best band ever, that they'd invented sliced bread, electricity, and the internet. And, of course, anything that you could possibly think of, the Beatles had done it sooner. And then, of course, Oasis came along and then told us that the Beatles were also the best band there ever was apart from themselves. And they were bloody amazing. And the Oasis were almost as amazing as well. And I just kind of got bored of being told what to like by other people. And in those days, you couldn't just go, I'm going to go and listen to a Beatles track. You had to go, well, do you know anybody that's got Beatles albums? Sure, but would they lend them to you? No, because Beatles albums were rare and expensive. So the second side of it was, how am I ever going to get to listen to them? Well, you have to listen to them on the radio, or you have to listen to the awful cover of Strawberry Fields Forever by Candy Flip that was in the charts in 1990, and I was sat there going, it's all right, isn't it? They're quite good, but they're not all that. And I suppose probably because I wasn't there at the time, I don't have that sense of sentimentality towards the Beatles catalogue that a lot of people do. My dad never liked the Beatles. He liked, respectively, Meatloaf, Tomato, however it's pronounced, Dire Straits, and a little bit of krautrock. I stole the krautrock bits and the Jean-Michel Jarre. I put that in my filing cabinet up in my head. But he didn't have the Beatles albums. I could go, I'm just going to put them on and listen to them and see if I like them. That just wasn't in his wheelhouse. So I never really got a chance to listen to the Beatles until I became much older. Around about the time that streaming happened and the 2009 box set happened, I decided to approach the Beatles from a slightly different perspective, which is discovering a band that no longer existed, a historical band. Now, I've done it before with Pink Floyd. At the moment, I'm doing it with Rolling Stones and Rush. But I went through the Beatles probably about 13, 14 years ago and listened to them fresh and go, if this was an album that came out today, what would I think of the new 2009 remasters? That's another episode, I suspect. I suspect I'm going to end up talking about every Beatles album in due course. But right now, I'm going to be talking about the 1962, 1966, and 1967, 1970 reissues that have just been announced, and specifically the final Beatles single, Now and Then. So, let's do some hot chart action on Now and Then. And I'm back in the room, primarily because today's hot chart action I'm going to be talking about was a record that was in another room. Last week, Suede released the picture disc 7-inch of Metal Mickey for its 30th birthday. Happy birthday, Metal Mickey. With pre-sales of 693 copies, I think. So it was number 1 in the midweeks for the physical singles. Number 1 in the midweeks for physical singles this week, unsurprisingly, is Beatles bands Now and Then. And that means I have to talk about, does the singles chart really matter anymore? Well, no, not really. The singles charts were always, when I was younger, they were always geared towards talking about physical releases. And so you'd end up with a limit of 3 physical singles that you could buy. Normally it would be like 3 CD singles, or a cassette single, a 7-inch and a CD, or a CD and a remix 12-inch and a cassette or something. These days, that doesn't really count, because almost everybody streams stuff. Hardly anybody buys physical media. I am a dinosaur. I like records that I can hold. I am superdeluxeedition.com man, pretty much. I don't particularly care about that. Be who you are, right? That said, do the single charts mean anything? Well, after Top of the Pops came to an end, the avenue that I had for listening to new releases was I'd listen to the chart rundowns on Sunday between 5 and 7 p.m. I'd watch Top of the Pops on Thursday, which was normally around about 7 o'clock. Sometimes the chart show on Saturday mornings. And one by one, those all kind of got pared away. Maybe the charts are still broadcast on the radio between 5 and 7 on a Sunday. But the days of me caring are long gone. Now, how much of that is me being old and only liking what I like and being a bit Grandpa Simpson about things are one thing. But also, singles don't necessarily exist in a conventional format anymore. People choose the singles. And the singles that they choose, the songs that they listen to on streaming, those become the singles. So the idea that a band would pick out a song and go, this song, I don't know, Cover You in Oil by AC/DC, for example, which probably got a picture disc release for Record Store Day. They go, that's the song we want you to listen to. But actually, if you're a fan, you might go, no, that's not the one I'm going to be listening to. I'm going to be listening to Shot Down in Flames instead, for example. And by the way, I am a huge fan of AC/DC, despite my disparaging and flippant comments about them. Also Iron Maiden, so if you're interested in me talking about those, do put a comment in the box. The second thing is, I looked at the charts, and I think there was one week where the top 12 songs were all Ed Sheeran, because Ed Sheeran's new album had 12 songs on. So everyone was listening to those 12 songs. And you kind of go, well, if the same artist has songs 1 to 12 on the charts, and those songs 1 to 12 are like the first song is number 1, and the second song is number 2, and the 12th song is number 12 because people have got bored listening and have switched it off or gone to the supermarkets or something. I kind of go, well, what's the point of having a singles chart? So the idea of the Beatles releasing a single, or anybody releasing a single, seems quite old-fashioned these days. People choose the singles that they want. But that does mean that for a very short window of time, I have owned the number 1 single, albeit in the midweek charts, for 2 weeks running on a physical format, which has been about 30 years since I've been able to say that. So I'm going to make the most of it. Unfortunately, they are obviously both songs that were recorded over 30 years ago, because I am old. Interestingly enough as well, the physical formats for Now and Then are, well, the vinyl's pretty much sold out everywhere. The CD single, I found a copy at a HMV on Saturday, but again, they'd only got 3 copies left, which, considering it had come out on the Friday, was pretty surprising, and they didn't have any vinyl copies. So I'd be quite surprised, actually, if it's not a rarity in future. Obviously, there's a 10-inch that you could only get through Spotify, but that's currently on Discogs for £121. Maybe I should have bought it and then sold it on. Who knows? So, Now and Then, the last Beatles song. Does it deserve to sit in the Beatles canon? Well, yes and no. It certainly deserves to sit in the Beatles canon as much as Free as a Bird and Real Love, both from the 1995 and 1996 anthology era. And the provenance of Now and Then is, of course, exactly the same. There was a 4-track cassette that Yoko Ono found while she was going through the John's belongings, and it said, "For Paul," written on it. And so she sent to Paul a copy of the tape. The tape was a 3rd-generation cassette of John playing on a piano in a room in his house. It's called the Coda Demos, I think they're called. And of the 3 tracks, there were 4 tracks that were on there. There was Free as a Bird, Real Love, Now and Then, and Grow Old With Me. And Grow Old With Me wasn't chosen for the Beatles because it already appeared on 1984's posthumous Milk and Honey album by John Lennon. I don't own it, so I don't know if it did or if it's any good or not, really, truth be told. But the same thing with Free as a Bird and Real Love and Now and Then is that they are Franken songs. They are Beatles songs that never existed in a conventional universe. The four guys in the Beatles never sat together in a room and played these songs at the same time, because one of them had the unfortunate account of not turning up to work because he was dead. Now that sounds very flippant, but it's true. The second part of it is all of these three songs were worked on by the Beatles during the 1995 anthology period, which was called the Threetles. And apologise if I'm telling you things you already know. I'm pretty sure in the Beatles' knowledge stakes I am very, very low in the pecking order. But they worked on Free as a Bird and Real Love and finished those. But when they came to recording Now and Then, there were some technical issues with the original version of the song that they had, which was a 60 millihertz hum from some electric mains nearby that interfered with the cassette. If you want to know what it sounds like, just Google it. Basically, it sounds like a buzzing fleet of angry wasps that want to sting you. And they tried to remove that sound, but they couldn't get it to be to the point where it was satisfactory. The original demo of Now and Then contains two bridges, which are not on this version. It also had some unfinished lyrics, which Paul McCartney wrote extra lyrics for and vocalised for in a kind of duet with his dead pal. And finally, the thing that I think made the difference for Now and Then to be released was that the band sourced a original first generation copy, the original tape from Sean Lennon, whereas the version they were using in 1995 was a third generation copy. If you are old like me, you will know that when you copy cassettes, here by the way is a 4-track version of a cassette for Manic Street Preacher's Gold Against the Soul, which was chopped out at the Hit Factory cassette manufacturing studio in London. If you made a copy of a tape, you would lose about 10% of your frequency range with each generation that you recorded. So in the days when people were trading bootleg tapes, having a second generation tape meant that you had 90% of the original recording. And if you had a 6th generation tape, you had about 40% of the frequency range of the original recording. Now that is what I was told. I'm not a scientist, and to be honest, I didn't really care. I was just being glad that I was able to get to hear a live show because I'd worn the records out to death. Having a first generation tape meant that there was 90 or 100% of the original recording there on the tape, and so therefore it was stronger and better, and it could have been using various demonic AI, take out all of the bits that aren't John Lennon and recreate the song so that it could actually be finished by the remaining members of the Beatles. In 1995, when they were recording Anthology, Harrison called the tape demo fucking rubbish, unquote, and they gave it up after about an afternoon or a day and a half. In 2005 and 2006 and 2007, Paul McCartney did say he wanted to go back and finish the song. He wanted to put it out so that people could hear it. And what you end up with in this is a song that's the oral equivalent of what car dealers call a cut and shut, where you've taken various parts from the same thing. Like, for example, you might have 2 or 3 cars, and between the 3 cars, you can cannibalise it to make one working copy. Record collectors do this too. Don't tell anyone else record collectors do this. But sometimes they buy a beat-up copy of a record, and they buy a copy that's got a really bashed cover, but a really great bunch of vinyl inside. Put the two together and get one great, one fantastic condition record. You didn't hear that, right? Nobody heard me say that? No? Okay, good, brilliant. So, Now and Then, it feels a little bit like a Franken song. Now, this is where I'm going to get bitchy. I don't particularly have to be nice about it. Is that the finished version of the song is a version of the Beatles that didn't exist, that never existed. Much like Free as a Bird and Real Love didn't ever exist. There was never a time when the 4 members of the Beatles got in the room and played those songs together. Those songs were compiled and put together separately, decades apart. So for Now and Then, we have John Lennon's tape demo from 1977. We have George Harrison's acoustic guitar from 1995. We then have Ringo doing the drums in June 2022. And we have Paul McCartney adding bass, slide guitar, copying, I think, what George Harrison may have originally performed in the recording, and adding extra vocals in 2022 and 23, alongside a string arrangement from Giles Martin. It is an unexpected song, in so much as you listen to it and you kind of go, it sounds like you've known it all your life, which is the way that all the best Beatles songs sound like you've known them forever. From the moment you've heard them, you just listen to them and go, wow, how did I not know this song before? This song felt so familiar, and it felt like both Real Love and Free as a Bird. But what it is it's a version of history that didn't happen. It's a Franken song, and it gives you a glimpse of an alternate future with the Beatles as older men, more mature, perhaps tempering the willful exuberance and utter stupidity occasionally of Apple Towers, but looking at it as 35, 40, 80-year-old men, and going, looking back on it now, what do we do? And of course the title, Now and Then, works perfectly in the context of it being the last song. But have to remember what George Harrison said when they were deciding to revisit old songs, which is, and he quote, "I hope someone does this to all my crap demos and turns them into hit songs. Now and Then is a glorified demo. It's a really good song. It's unfinished, but it is a demo. And there's no two ways about it. You can't pretend that it isn't. So listening to it and going, that's the way it should always have been. No, absolutely not. It was recorded by John 7 years after he left the Beatles. 8, actually, technically, because I think he left in late 1969, but only announced it in 1970. And Now and Then is a version. This song could not have existed any earlier than about 2021. So the band used AI to strip out the 60 megahertz mega hum on the original first generation cassette. And the way that works, I must admit, if I fully understood it, I'd be an AI programmer. And I don't want to do that, because then that means I'd have to go to a conference with Elon Musk and Rishi Sunak, neither of whom I'm fans of. But you used AI, like they did for the Get Back film, to take separate audio tracks to identify speech, bass, guitars, drums, identify the frequencies, and isolate the original tracks. Which is, by the way, they also did for the Revolver reissue last year with the 4-track masters, is that they used the 4-track masters and then used AI to identify and strip out and isolate each individual performance. But what it is it doesn't feel quite right. It kind of sits in the uncanny valley. If you know what uncanny valley is, skip the next minute or so. The uncanny valley is a thing where a human looks at something that's been generated by a machine or an algorithm, and they detect something that isn't quite realistic and right about it. So, for example, the terrible CGI in The Mummy, which I think is The Rock, that's uncanny valley. I mean, technically it's correct, but it's very sloppy. The wolves that you will see in Dominion, a prequel to The Exorcist, which clearly, or coyotes, I'm not sure, or foxes, or some kind of weird, angry, desert dog thing. I'm going to say they're desert wolves, which, by the way, sounds like it's the name of a metal band. Coming soon, the Desert Wolves. So the desert wolves in Dominion, a prequel to The Exorcist, don't move the way that animals move. They move the way that a computer, which has been, forced to interpolate movement between point A and point B, thinks a wolf might move. But that's not how wolves move. And Now and Then has this element of being slightly sitting in the uncanny valley. Well, you listen to it and you go, it's very good, but, and there's always a but it's not quite real. And especially this is brought out particularly vociferously in the video, which features footage from 1995 of the three of them performing the song, footage from 2022 of them individually performing the song, the string section being recorded at Abbey Road, because of course it has to be recorded at Abbey Road. And then finally, CGI isolated frames and outtakes from other Beatles movies featuring the various members from, for example, Magical Mystery Tour, Help, A Hard Day's Night, goofing off in between takes and then being used to kind of liven up the song. So that's new Beatles stuff you've probably not seen before. But it's got, like, for example, footage of a John Lennon from 1965 in that kind of tan suit, bouncing around, pretending to direct the orchestra at Abbey Road in 2022, which was only 57 years later. it looks weird and wrong. It looks like, for example, I think this is not actually perhaps the best example, when Tarkin turned up in Rogue One and they had the fabulous actor, I think his name is James Henry, playing Grand Moff Tarkin, and then they CGI'd Peter Cushing over his performance. It's kind of like that. You sat there and going, this never happened. This shouldn't be real. I shouldn't be watching this. But there you are. And there's an element of feeling when I listen to Now and Then, kind of going, this is impossible. This shouldn't happen. But that's being a little bit churlish, because really I'm listening to it and I'm going, well, that's a Beatles song that I never thought I'd ever get to hear. And if it's the song that puts the ending to the Beatles story, then what a fabulous way to bring it to a close. What I will also add is that there's an element of revisionism around this, because it rewriting history to kind of turn the Beatles split, which was a little bit rancorous and a little bit bitter, into a tale of redemption and resolution, which perhaps the reality doesn't really reflect that. So, I don't know if Now and Then is on the Radio 1 playlist. I'm too old to listen to Radio 1. What I do know is that Real Love wasn't on the Radio 1 playlist in 1995, which led Paul McCartney to describe the programmers at Radio 1 as kindergarten kings, which is a bit harsh. We have to recognise that Now and Then and the Beatles, they're an old band. They've been split up for over 50 years. They're not new. They're not going to be amazing. I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to hear this and discover their next favourite band and then be really upset that they can't actually see the Beatles, but they can kind of see Ringo touring America. Because, by the way, I think Ringo's played 10 dates in the UK since 1992 and 534 in America, which is a little odd when you think about it, but so be it. Please play Brazil, yeah? So Now and Then, it's a gift that we weren't expecting to get. It's quite good. It's really good, actually, but it feels a little bit strange and a little bit weird to listen to. Next thing, Now and Then doesn't exist in a echo chamber. It doesn't exist in isolation. It's not been put out just because they want to do it. They've announced reissues, expanded editions of 1962 to 1966, triple LPs, now on coloured vinyl, of both this and the Blue Album 67 to 1970, adding singles that never were. And the strange and unusual thing about this, and I have to pick up two things here. Firstly, there is no reason that Now and Then should be on this hits compilation. If you are going to do a Beatles singles compilation, also include Free as a Bird and Real Love on it, which is not the case. The second one is the single of Now and Then does not contain Free as a Bird or Real Love. So you don't actually get a reunion EP by the Beatles. You get 3 separate A-sides backed with ancient tracks. And the vinyl versions of Free as a Bird and Real Love are long deleted now, 27 years ago. Free as a Bird has alternate versions of This Boy, Christmas Time Is Here Again, and I Saw Her Standing There. And Real Love has Babies in Black, Yellow Submarine, and Here, There and Everywhere. On the 12-inch, there's a 12-inch of this now and then that contains about 8 minutes of music at most, Now and Then, and a 2023 remix of Love Me Do. And Love Me Do is only about 2.5 minutes long. So I do wonder what the point is of doing remastered, expanded versions of Red and Blue. Everybody's got them. I think, like, when you hit to a certain age, somebody knocks on the door and gives you a pile of Beatles LPs and says, there you are, alongside a copy of Dire Straits' Money for Nothing compilation, or Brothers in Arms, and probably Robbie Williams' second album. It's just part of being British, I'm afraid. But I don't understand why these compilation albums are missing Free as a Bird and Real Love. Well, I do understand why. It's money, isn't it? And the Beatles are short of a few quid, since they haven't played a gig for 60 years or thereabouts. But it does feel a little bit sloppy and a little bit wrong to have these albums reissued without Free as a Bird and Real Love on. Or and if you aren't going to do that, then at least, do the good grace of giving Now and Then the Threetles songs on the B-side. So, if you only want to own Now and Then, get the CD single, by the way. The chart position for it has yet to be announced. It did reach number 42 in last week's chart on the grounds of 16,000 downloads, which were sold in a 10-hour period from around about 9 o'clock on Friday morning through to about 7 o'clock on Friday afternoon. But there wasn't a physical version of it that was out yet. We will find out the chart positions then, and who knows, I might actually own a #1 single. It's been a while since I've done that. Well, actually last week, given that Metal Mickey was the #1 single in the midweek, so it got to number 3 in the actual proper physical singles chart, and it didn't even make it into the top 100 because of Taylor Swift, who I think is really good at what she does. What she does doesn't do anything for me, but that's not really the point, is it? I can admire Taylor Swift's work and go, well, it's very good for what it is, but what it is not for me. Not a criticism of her. I can tell she's fantastic at what she does. Sometimes you see a band or an artist and you go, they are on it. They are bang on it. They are very good at what they do. And you kind of go, but I don't like it. It's like if someone said to me, here's the best tasting broccoli in the world. And I go, still broccoli. I don't win friends with salad. And since you can't have a NOTCAST without a Simpsons quote, there you are. I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you for 26 minutes talking about a 4.5-minute song. I didn't think I could do it, but there you are. Next time, well, I've got a number of things I've got in mind. I might talk about the Manic Street Preachers. I might talk about Kraftwerk. I might talk about David Bowie. I might talk about New Order. Tempted with starting off talking about Iron Maiden, actually. And at some point, I inevitably will do the Beatles albums, but I will leave it some time for that, because one of the great things about doing these NOTCASTs is that I go back and listen to records and get really deep into the grooves, and it gives me a newfound appreciation for things that I've known and loved for decades. It gives me an opportunity to go back to them, revisit them, and experience them anew. Which is handy, because it means then I don't have to buy the remastered versions of the albums. You just turn it up a bit, and then up a bit more, then up a bit more. And there, that's remastered for you. It's just really loud. So, now and then, thanks for watching if you made it to the end. Hope you like this and other episodes, and hopefully I will see you soon. Does it give the seal of approval? Well, good job, Beatles band. Good job. Bye.